Hi, I'm Becky Stern. On this week's craft video podcast, I'm going to show you how to make this, a QR code scarf, on this, a computerized knitting machine. What's a QR code? Well, it's this. It's a two-dimensional barcode, just like barcodes you see on products at the store, except it stores more information because instead of just using one direction, it uses two. So I've imprinted whatever information I want into here, programmed the pattern into the knitting machine, and knitted it out as a scarf. You don't have to use a knitting machine for this project. You can just knit it by hand if you know how to knit in stranded knitting method with two colors. You just need to use really small needles and it's a little bit tedious. So first I'll show you how to make the pattern on the computer and then how to knit it up.
Okay, so I'm here at qrcode.kwa.com to get my QR code. So I'm going to select text and then type in whatever text I want. And then I'm going to pick the small size just because it's fewer stitches, it'll be easier to make. And I'll hit generate. And there it is. I can right click on it, save it anywhere I want, and move it into Photoshop. Once you bring your QR code into Photoshop, it's time to resize it so that it's the right size to input the pattern into the knitting machine. I'd like each one of these blocks or pixels in the QR code to be 4 stitches, 2 by 2. So I'm going to go to Image, Image Size, and reduce this down to 46 pixels because the original one is 23 blocks across. Multiply that by 2. Then I'm going to add a grid on top of this picture so that I know what to input as the pattern into the knitting machine. You can adjust your grid preferences in the Photoshop Preferences, Guides, Grid, Slices, and Count. And then in here in the grid section, select Custom and have a grid line every 1 pixel with just one subdivision. That'll make a nice pink line everywhere there should be a new stitch. So I'm going to go to View, Show, Grid, and there we have it, a nice pink grid on top of it. I'm going to use this image to input the pattern into the knitting machine.
Okay, I'm ready to input the pattern into the knitting machine. This is a computerized knitting machine, which means I can tell it to, I can feed it pixel values, black or white, or main color and contrasting color, to make a gridded pattern that then it'll execute as I bring the carriage across. So to do that, I have my laptop here with the image we created in Photoshop, and I have basically a black button and a white button, and I use that to go through each row of the pattern to tell the machine what color to knit. I have my instruction manual handy because it's a pretty complicated piece of machinery and the controls are not always so intuitive. So this part takes a little bit of time. I can use a repositionable guide in Photoshop to keep track of where I am. By the way, you don't have to use Photoshop for this project. If you want, you could even print this out on graph paper and then scribble over the lines that you've already gone through, and it would do the same thing. Next, I'll cast on stitches to contain the pattern. Since it's 46 stitches wide and we want a front and a back of the scarf to look nice, I programmed the machine to do 2 QR codes side by side, which means I need, a total of 46 above 0 and 46 below 0 and the stitch markers on my machine. So I'll set that up now. Using my main color now, I'm going to cast on the stitches. Now I'll use this, which is called a cast-on comb, to weigh down my stitches at the bottom. Just hang it evenly. And then using these weights that came with my machine, stick those on too. And then I'll do just a couple more rows before I start my pattern. Okay, I've checked to make sure that everything is hanging evenly, nothing is caught on anything, and now it's time to start knitting in pattern. So I switched the mode on the carriage here to the two-color knitting mode, and then I've already selected the pattern here. What this does is it engages a magnet on that'll then pull the carriage along with this strip that gets pulled through the machine and tells it to knit which color when. So I'll pull it back in front of the left-hand turn mark just so it knows that we're starting. Oh yeah, I also have to thread my contrasting color if I want it to knit in that color, now don't I? That just goes in this second yarn slot here. Okay, I finished the first 2 rows of the pattern, and you can see now that it's pulled out all of these needles according to the pattern to which ones are going to knit in black. Here comes the really fun part. Now that the pattern's done, I'll knit the rest of the scarf in white and see if I can do another QR code upside down at the other end. Okay, so the scarf's all finished. I sewed a hem across the bottom here and then up along the edge to sew the 2 plies together so it's like right side out. It's the same on both sides. And then I have this application on my phone that'll scan 2D barcodes. So let's see if we can get it to scan. Hopefully, yes, yay! Alright, so there we go, and we have the text that we originally input. So now anybody who's takes a picture of my scarf while I'm wearing it could get the same text. I hope you've enjoyed this week's craft video podcast, and if you make a QR code scarf, I want to see it in the craft flicker pool. Have a good week.